Hello there and welcome to Equity Story. My name is David Malinowski and I'll be your host today. And today we have a very, very special episode because my guest here today is a guy with whom I personally used to work with, that I became friends with and whom I absolutely love. Maciej Rutecki,
Thank you for having me.
Well, mate, absolutely my pleasure. Maciej is the one of the general counsels of Ciech Group. He is also in charge of various venture capital related aspects of the business of the larger conglomerates. So today he will tell us a bit more about venture capital from slightly different perspective than we discussed to date, from a lawyer's perspective and also from risk management perspective. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So Maciej, thank you so much for coming in again.
Thank you again for having me.
Fantastic stuff.
It's a pleasure to see you in a new role.
Well, it's a slightly different setup to what we got.
But it's not bad.
To.
So you know.
No, I mean the studio is nice, and it's a different proposition to being a lawyer, a bit more kind of
civilized.
Yeah, a bit more civilized indeed. It's not stressed out, nothing is so urgent. Did you yesterday, all that sort of stuff. But I suppose first of all, for the benefit of our viewers, because obviously we know each other for years. So if you could tell the viewers about yourself, about what you do, and the whole story. So how you entered the legal profession, and how it kind of developed for you to the place where you are now at the moment.
Yeah, so basically I started, I think it would be 8 years ago or 9 years ago. It was a pretty...
That's a long sentence.
Long sentence. Almost 1/3 of my life. So
Jesus.
So I think I started pretty ordinarily. Just started at the beginning of my law apprenticeship. My first practice was the corporate practice of one of the biggest Polish law firms, and I've been practicing the corporate and M&A side of things for 7 years, I think.
Don't tell me, because I get scared myself. I think I started in what? I think we both graduated uni the same year. I think it was 2014.
Yeah.
Jesus, I mean, time flies, doesn't it?
Time flies.
Jesus
indeed,
Christ.
it does. So for 7 years, I've been corporate lawyer. Pretty maybe not basic stuff, but I think nothing extraordinary, just a standard corporate M&A practice. I've switched, a few firms along the way. My last corporate practice was in the same room with you. So,
oh God.
Yeah. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back, I would say. And out of the blue, I was contacted by Ciech, who's developing their own, legal practice, in the sense that they want to sort of siphon, the best and brightest from the market to establish their own, corporate practice, in order not to outsource most of their work, just to keep it in-house. And along the way, while dealing with the ordinary corporate and contractual stuff, I was put in charge with all the agricultural matters in the group, and also established as the head lawyer or main lawyer of the newly established VC practice, which will have its, I think, second birthday, my working at Ciech, in March this year.
Very good. So it's another cause to celebrate.
Yeah, there's always
pints.
There's always a reason to party. So yeah, I think that's my story. So currently, I'm dividing my time between agriculture and VC. So two things that don't instinctually go along each other.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's like two different worlds.
Yeah, it's like a day
Venture
job
capital-
and a night job. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's the story in a nutshell, if you will.
To be fair with you, when you said about having worked at different law firms, etc., and then obviously mentioning the fact that how we met, so working in the same law firm, working in the same building, SSW, which obviously we both say hi to SSW, by the way.
Hi guys and gals.
Yeah, and to be fair, best time of my life because coincidentally, to be fair, coincidentally, the stint at SSW was my first job when I came back from England after almost a decade living there to Poland. So I worked there too.
Yeah. So we bore witness to how David was adjusting to living and working in Poland, which was a sight to see, I must say.
Well, suffices to say that when one makes a move to a different country and wants to establish himself, it's good to go out, meet new people,
see the sights,
have fun. So yeah, it was pretty, wild when it comes to partying. Really enjoyed that. Met heaps of people in a very short space of time. So that was great. Great memories. Great law firm. Great law firm. Great memories.
Yeah,
that's,
sure.
But yeah, so I remember when you were there actually. So you came there because that was a part of the transition for you as well, I suppose. Because when you came there as a straight kind of vanilla corporate M&A lawyer, and during that time when you were at SSW, you actually started being more geared up to speed with strictly venture capital, VC stuff, investments in startups, that segment, if you like, of mergers and acquisitions. So if you could tell us maybe how was that perhaps different to the sort of more vanilla M&A deals and investments?
Well, on the face of it, you're doing pretty much the same in terms that, a venture capital deal is in essence an M&A deal. However, it differs in certain aspects, which at some point make it into two completely different categories, which I think it's not so easily traversed for a strictly, as you mentioned, vanilla M&A lawyer. First of all, what I would say is the lingo.
So the lingo is different.
Yeah. So there are certain terms which are not, which vanilla M&A lawyers are not particularly used to, like all the names of the seed rounds, of the investment rounds, different categories of investors. So angel investors, VCs, CVCs, founders, and so on. So it's a pretty specific type of investment.
A bit more niche, effectively.
A bit more niche. The types of targets, if you will, is pretty different, because you usually are dealing with either startups or companies which are more or less developed, however, not yet on the let's say industrial or commercial scale. So yeah, it's pretty different. I think that the first thing you notice in such an investment is, usually in an M&A deal, there's the other side. You try to push your points across. Sometimes you meet in the middle, sometimes you don't. In a VC transaction, the matter is more complicated, because usually there are, more than 2 parties.
Okay.
So several investors with different levels of investors, with different investment goals, with different return expectations. So I think that the biggest challenge or art in a VC transaction is to balance out the
interests of
the interests of all parties, just to get as many points of yours as you want. However, with knowing that not everything will be obtainable or possible. So yeah, I think it's you put pressure on different points, I would say. So this is the most difficult thing, I would say. Maybe not difficult, but if you're not accustomed to it, it takes a bit of practice.
To kind of switch your modus operandi of your thinking of things.
Yeah.
So it's not as, so it's a bit more nuanced, you might say.
Nuanced. Also, the level of sophistication of the targets, while talking strictly in legal matters, is different, because you're often investing in, I think most VC transactions, I know this may be a generalization, is tech startups, fintech startups, and so on, which often are managed by either scientists or engineers or people with a certain business acumen. However, not
they're not the suits like us.
Yeah,
they're not the corporate guys. I mean, some of them are. Like,
some of them,
you can have a bloke
sure.
from Goldman Sachs or whatever who actually sets up his own startup with his mates after he finishes his analyst program. But that's an exception rather than the rule. So you've got these people who are more, that actually came up with the idea, and they don't have like, this sort of like suit-like business experience, that they didn't go through the corporate mill like you and me. They think in a different way, and they work in a different way as well.
They think in a different way, they work in a different way, and sometimes they don't think about,
risks.
But also the upkeep or keeping of the companies.
Well, like the corporate governance stuff that you have to have, like board meetings and resolutions
board meetings,
and stuff.
certain things are, not up to speed legally. Sometimes there is mess, with share titles and so on. So there's a lot of cleaning up to do before you can move forward with the
expansion.
With the transaction itself.
No, I can imagine. I mean, because these types, they're not they're not geared like you and me in this sort of kind of sequential approach to things that you kind of do acquire through working in large organizations. But by the virtue of the fact that they built up the whole thing from the scratch, as it's the clues in the name, it's a startup. They are more into like the business of doing things as opposed to just playing around with the housekeeping aspect. That's why they need bright and experienced people like like yourself to come in and say to them like, look, mate, like you have to sort this out before you cash in on your millions, selling your startup and stuff. No, it's great stuff. Before we actually venture into the whole startup idea a bit further, just to explore this switch that you made that we mentioned. So, being a lawyer who works in the law firm, so who is a fee earner there and has its external clients, works as a part of the team, then making that move from that to the actual client, so the guy who sits in-house on the other side of the Zoom call and essentially seeks help from external counsel. What is it like? How did you find the whole transition? Was it easy? Was it pleasant? Was it surprising? To change the mode of your thinking from working in a private practice to in-house, and how did that impact on your perception of lawyers, the market, and everything? Being on this other side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been hesitant for many years to make the switch. I think I might have had some sort of a bias, I think, towards in-house work. Sometimes arising from experience, and sometimes just as a, I don't know, general thought. Let's call it like that. That it's not, it's not very challenging. That it's usually
that was your perception. You mean?
Yeah. That it's mostly, a housekeeping role, and you outsource, the more complicated stuff outside, because
intellectually demanding and curating,
because
interesting stuff.
I think that was our perception, being on the private practice side of things, that you're getting, the most juicy problems and the most complicated ones, and those that are the most, that are burdened with risk and so on. I found very quickly that it's not entirely the case. I mean, I heard a quote somewhere that role of an in-house is the loneliest legal profession.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to working in a firm, because basically you're the first line of defense in all legal matters.
Oh yeah, so it's essentially this idea that people kind of, it's like with the family kind of gatherings and stuff.
Yeah, like
they hear, oh yeah, so my son is a lawyer or whatever, or like your cousin here that he's a lawyer. Oh yeah, I've got this legal problem.
Yeah, and you work in banking, and you get
an IP question.
Yeah.
And you're like, solve this for me.
Yeah.
Like, and know the answer off the top of your, head. Yeah.
I mean, there of course are, people in-house more inclined towards certain aspects of law, like employment, corporate, contractual, real estate. But basically, you deal with everything that comes, which is a bit frightening at first, because you are dealing with things you only heard of.
So it's outside of your comfort zone, effectively. Really.
Yeah, almost entirely.
Yeah.
So I understand why some people may be hesitant to make the switch, because it really is a bit overwhelming.
And you can't say no. Like, someone comes to you with a GDPR question. You can't be like, no, go to the GDPR team, effectively.
Well, you can say that it's not your cup of tea, for example. But the problem remains, and it needs to be solved. So it really forces you to go outside your comfort zone and get acquainted, at least, with as many different types of law as possible. So IP, employment, and so on. Of course, you're not expected to be an expert in those fields of law. But I think you pretty quickly get at least a hang of things. I mean, I've never worked in IP in my life. I mean, I knew it existed. I knew people who worked in
there was like a bloke down the corridor who did IP law or whatever. You kind of like email him stuff on due diligence, like, can you look at it, make sure it's okay, kind of thing.
Yeah, but very quickly I needed to get up to speed, on patent law and
oh God, that sounds boring. Jesus. I'm so you do what you gotta do.
Yeah, to each their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, it forces you to get out of your comfort zone. However, it has, I think, one key advantage that the corporate lawyers will never get.
Okay.
you really get to know the business, whether it's chemical production, agriculture. So in every type of business that your company is dealing with, it really gives you the perspective which I think corporate lawyers don't have. Because
A well-rounded perspective.
yeah, because
good overview
you know,
of a business
in
that you work in.
M&A transaction, I think you mostly don't care what is what are the operations of your target or your client.
You don't really have the time really to learn properly.
If it affects the transaction, for example, with with regulatory approvals, sure, but to a certain extent. But you really never get to know, you're selling a company that makes packaging, water, phones.
Yeah.
You really don't know, and I think don't care, because it's one of the few or dozen or hundreds transactions this year. So you really don't have the time.
You kind of shift it, right?
Yeah,
So it's like an automated. I mean, at least I found mergers and acquisitions to be like this. So it's an automated process almost. You come in, sign the the heads of terms are kind of like sign, etc. Then engage. NDAs, due diligence, key documents, SPA negotiation.
The full Monty. So
that. Yeah, the formalities, then, the CPs have to be satisfied, maybe you have to wait a bit for, some governmental agency to give their clearance or whatever. And then you complete, that's it, right? So it's like a repetitive process almost. Whereas in your case, from what you are saying, it can be felt that you really see different risks, different problems that arise from time to time, during the lifetime, of this business, that people kind of come from different areas of the organization to you, from intellectual property, from employment,
contracts, everything.
Everything, precisely right. And you do learn about different business lines and ins and outs of how this business works and why do they do things the way they do. So it's also interesting, I suppose within its own right.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never thought that I would, be interested and start learning more and more about plant protection and agriculture. But now I think it's my one of my main points of interest, because without knowing
as a professional development,
without knowing the ins and outs of the business of your company, I think your role is you're going to have a bad time, a really bad
bad time.
Yeah,
like obviously like South Park. Oh, you're going to, was it the ski coach? You're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
speaking of South Park.
No, exactly. Speaking about people and colleagues. So essentially, from a colleague, you became, as an in-house lawyer, a client overnight to, I would imagine, a huge population of your mates.
Yeah.
How is that, mate? How is that? Tell me about it. Tell us about it. How is it? What does it feel like? To kind of change this hat overnight. So you are the kingmaker, the client. All of a sudden.
Well, I would be lying if I said that it doesn't give you a small ego boost, or God complex.
It's like feels good.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel good. However, you see kind of the other side, and the tricks of the
the tricks
side.
of trade, right?
Yeah, tricks of trade. So You know the kitchen. So
Where all the bodies are buried.
well, oh yeah, I've buried some myself. So,
Don't worry, we'll cut this out.
yeah, but it makes you understand, certain things in the business. However, you also know why sometimes clients are either mad at their lawyers or dissatisfied. So I wouldn't say anything bad about my corporate colleagues. However, your role changes, your perception changes, and your attitude changes as well, I would say.
Okay. Well, I suppose, you've got the wholesale of different incentives, and I suppose the overarching theme, to my mind at least, and you might agree with that or not, is that from a fee earner, so the person actually whose time doing stuff generates money, you become a business support function whereby you are there to mitigate or scale back certain risks, but that's obviously that adds value within its own right. That's why people have in-house lawyers, but that in itself it's not a revenue generating stream. So it's a cost. So it's a different mentality as well in this sense.
Well, it depends. It depends on how you look at things, because you may not generate revenue in terms of billables. So that goes out
of the window.
However, if you're good at your job, you can really save your clients a ton of money. With regards to risk mitigation, let's say control of spending on external help. So I mean, it doesn't. It's not making your charts go green, but it really the
value is still there.
Keeps the monsters at bay.
under the bed. Under the bed. Taking kind of step into this venture capital sphere of things, but still looking at it from like a helicopter view. Ciech, and Ciech Ventures. Can you tell us a bit more about this initiative? What's the sort of rationale behind this? What is it that you guys do? Obviously, to the extent you can talk about it. Because obviously. But it's so essentially it's a VC arm within a large industrial conglomerate. Effectively.
So a CVC, as it's called, so a corporate venture capital practice. I mean, the main rationale behind it was that I think the word that would explain it best or describe it best would be efficiency. Because the group itself, in every aspect of its activity, generates and uses indescribable amount of IP, technology, and so on. So you're constantly in development, constantly in research, in tweaking the existing technology just to get a few efficiency percent more. But oftentimes the technology is not developed by your team. Although Ciech has a really big R&D arm. But sometimes new developments are not made in-house, rather in the market or in the wild, if you will. So the idea was that instead of buying what's on the market or licensing and so on, it's not a bad idea to invest in companies which are developing, tech which maybe not may not be of use right now,
but in 5
years, 10 years, if it lifts off, it can save us X amount of money, allow us to produce X percent more, be more in line with all the green initiatives and so on. So it's cheaper to invest
at that early stage.
At the early stage, and to be honest, to be first if it lifts off.
To win, to be first, to win.
Because it's a game of inches. Sometimes new membrane or something can save you millions. So it's strictly it's an investment practice strictly for the future and focused on technology rather than classic financial returns.
So essentially, as opposed to just kind of seeing what the market has to offer in real time, as in like today, tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean,
it's more about you kind of having a kind of a vision and maintaining an interest as to what is going on the edges. In the sense of what innovations or ideas people work on.
What could be useful, down the line.
And kind of getting in
a
earlier.
Head start, yeah.
That's pretty smart. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see benefits to that, especially since when it comes to the ongoing innovation, you obviously have your gigantic R&D arm, which works on rolling basis.
It never sleeps.
Yeah, never sleeps. Yes, like like London or Dubai.
Yeah.
Oh man, no, but so that in your day-to-day work, that is related to, well, as far as I see it, obviously knowing you, to two aspects of your professional capacity. So first of all, obviously, as we discussed, you being a lawyer, so being there, looking, around the shoulder when it comes to the business guys, the technology guys, making sure everything is well governed from the corporate side of things, managing risks, but also in your case, serving as an executive, so as a board member. Which you've been appointed to. So there are two different hats that you wear. Do you want to tell us about that as well, or?
Yeah, I mean the board member is just it's different companies than the venture practice. So
purpose vehicles for different projects, effectively.
They're basically companies that are currently in production of different technologies or products, which, to the extent I am allowed to say, are not yet on the market. They will be in a few next months or years. If it lifts off, it's going to be pretty big. So my role there is mostly as a gatekeeper of all things illegal. However, the venture capital practice is more, boots on the ground, almost typical work, which we remember from our corporate days.
Okay. Well, I suppose it's still at the end of the day, it's effectively a lot of what you would do is still management of risks. Really.
Sure.
Kind of making sure that the sort of the merry train of innovation doesn't go off the rails, so to speak. And in terms of any particular areas that when it comes to sectors. I mean, obviously you mentioned agriculture, but can you tell us about any kind of particular interesting aspects of it, any particularly innovative processes, products that you guys are looking at? Anything you can tell us?
Well, I think that what we are looking for is currently mostly focused, I would say, on so-called green projects. So,
but ESG or?
Yeah. So basically, to be compliant or in line with the ESG requirements or guidelines,
Yeah.
if you will. So let's say our last one of our last transactions was in a startup, which it's I'm going to butcher and simplify it.
No, well,
Basically, they make fuel out of coffee waste.
all right, okay.
So used coffee beans from
And they turn that into fuel.
different from different coffee chains. They, of course, that's oversimplification. They compress it, make it into like small bricks or briquettes, if you will, which turns into really efficient fuel.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Which is greener than oil and coal and so on. So it's not utilized and at a huge industrial scale. However, at some point, it may save you, a few percent on energy expenditures, which now can, kill a business.
Yeah, it can make a difference with the energy prices that we've got, right?
So a few percent in terms of energy is it's not $10. So
it's not immaterial in this day and age.
So basically, the aim is to either make our production process more efficient, more green, but also in simple terms to save us money in the long run.
Absolutely. I mean, but out of all the things, coffee, that's fascinating.
Who would have thought?
That's exactly precisely what I think. Who would have thought, like, you can turn used coffee beans into energy.
I mean, one of the most fascinating aspects of this venture capital work is you see how sometimes brilliant ideas come up. I mean, things you wouldn't have thought. I mean, of course, there are, very specific technical things, like we invested in a company which creates certain carbon filters for, industrial chimneys, which allow you to filter out smoke and all those particles and so on. However, I think it's not as astonishing as the coffee thing, which to me really blew my mind to a certain extent. And it may sound silly that fuel out of coffee, but considering the the types of investors, both financial and in terms of banks and so on, I think it's not as silly as it may seem. So this is, I think, the most interesting part. I mean, you really get to see and in a way be a part of innovations that really can make a difference, which is
it's quite satisfying. It must be quite satisfying within its own right.
Yeah, obviously. It's satisfying because as coming back a bit to the tale of a corporate lawyer, you really, I wouldn't say you don't make an impact, but it's one deal of many.
Yeah. Next quarter, no one remembers about.
Yeah. So I think you don't necessarily have the sense of accomplishment that this deal really means something and it can make a difference. It may not, but when thinking of the future, I think it may.
So, in a nutshell, essentially, from what you are saying, the deals that you would be working on in this venture capital sphere, particularly within the confines, if we can put it that way, of Ciech, give you this sense of essentially being at the forefront of innovation and actually, in that sense, making it or potentially making a difference, as opposed to just kind of churning deals in a large, massive corporate machine. Is that fair to put it that way?
Well, I don't want to sound, very grandiose or
preachy.
The thing is with the VC transactions executed by Ciech or in which Ciech takes part, is that we really need to have business incentive to invest in a company, but also let's say scientific or technological one. Because a typical VC transaction, I think, again, it's oversimplification, understands returns as, you invest 5 million, you expect to get 7 in the next 10 years. Let's say.
Well, for the sake of argument, of course.
Yeah. However, in this type of investments, financial returns are not the most important thing.
So cash is king, but there are other considerations.
I mean, it's great if there are financial returns, and we hope there will be. But the most important thing is to understand the science behind the invention or technology, determine its usefulness in the next 5, 10, 20 years, to convince the management of the group that it's
a worthwhile investment.
It's a worthwhile investment. The tickets are not extraordinary, between 1 and 5 million euros. So it's nothing extraordinary. Or
in terms of, so you mean like the volume, the size of
a particular investment. Sometimes lower. However, as I've said, the money is not the key issue here. The technology and its usefulness for us down the line is the main thing. So the pressure points of the agreement or the deal itself are a bit different, I think, because you secure different risks, you mitigate different risks. The contracts are a bit different in that sense. The people you meet are different, and you need to focus. You need to take your eyes off the money. You need to think, about how it benefits your client, not in a monetary sense, but IP-wise, R&D-wise, and so on.
So a bit more holistic of an approach, effectively.
Yeah, a bit more holistic, because you think of your clients or your company in which you work more in terms of a business that not only needs money, but in our case also tech. So it's not just numbers.
Okay, and so we spend quite a lot of time talking about what's interesting, what's innovative, what's good, what's adding value effectively. All these aspects of VC that that you enjoy. Any downsides? Anything that you kind of? I'm not trying to lead you in any way, but I'll give you an example. So, working with startups, is there anything except for maybe what you've mentioned about this, corporate governance points, that you kind of find that to be, just frustrating or difficult, or that you wished, was different in your kind of day-to-day dealing with these people? And that can be anything, based, in terms of the transactions or, the process or anything.
Well, I wouldn't call it a downside. I mean, it's just a matter of perspective and what you're accustomed to. I mean, the main thing I think is key here is that, lawyers often play sort of second fiddle, in the sense that the founders and the investors They know what they want to get across, know what they want, and they not always, but often, the legal stuff is maybe secondary or not as important as
lawyers would like to think it is.
Yeah. Also, the thing I've mentioned is there are often lots of different types of interest groups, which have different goals for the company, different levels of investment, different levels of acceptable risks. So it's not always the case that you will get what you want.
So basically, the most frustrating thing is basically aligning these different stakeholders.
Yeah, because for example, you may have some notions as to how, let's say, tag-along rights should work, drag-along rights should work, how to secure your stake in a company from being diluted. However, your perspective may not be the perspective of your fellow investors. So you need to, it's really a balance game more than anything, I would say. So if you're accustomed to, the sort of dog eats dog M&A world, it's not often the case. And you need to
seek
consensus and sometimes to let things go.
Okay.
So, and oftentimes this is maybe one of the maybe not downsides, but the challenges is that you're working either alongside or you have on the other side people who are not exactly lawyers or business people. You have engineers, finance guys, fintech guys, scientists, to which the
you
legal,
just have to hold hands with them. You can't play barbarians at the gate.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard for them to understand certain
concepts and stuff,
legal aspects of the case, or why do lawyers fight over points 12b and so on.
Yeah, so, to them it can come across oftentimes. I sometimes get that as well. Working with people who are actually business people, that it's just always being difficult. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like,
nitpicky.
Can we just get on?
Yeah,
with this?
yeah.
For them, it's just like
we ask questions and a debate over whether it should say is or was. So it's sometimes hard to get your legal points across and explain why, let's say, this point is essential for us.
Of course.
But it's it's I think one of the things you wouldn't learn in private practice, or maybe not to this extent.
No, of course.
Unless you're dealing with VCs on a daily basis, then maybe. But I think skill-wise, it's a very interesting thing, and again, it makes you come out of your comfort zone, which is not easy, I may say.
Well, definitely.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah. Oh, I suppose working in a corporate firm that you just do one line of work. Just focusing on, say, transactions.
However, the lack of billables is nice, I must say.
Well, yes, and I can imagine the hours have been better, aren't they? Frankly,
you'd be surprised.
As in when needed basis. A bit like in law firm, but it can't be as bad as in.
No, it's not.
Well, there we go.
It's not.
That's the kind of concession I want to extract from you.
Viewers
who are lawyers.
I wouldn't say it's as bad or worse. But it's not all sunshine and rain
and rainbows.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 9 to 5. It's usually 9 to early evening, I would say. But it's nothing like a law firm. No.
One last quick question.
Yeah.
Pretty much a yes or no response. Would you ever, having worked at Ciech for this time now, what like 2 years?
Yeah,
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah,
in March.
yeah. Would you consider going back to private practice to law firm? Yes or no? Frankly.
Well, I never say never.
Smart.
But yeah, it would be another transition, you know, going back to the dark side. So just joking.
Darkness.
But no, I never say never. I'm not considering it at the moment. But who knows?
Well then,
Maybe we'll meet next year, and you'll ask how it's.
And you'll be my boss.
Yeah, and you'll ask how it's to transition back. But no, in all seriousness, it really showed me that, you know, any notions you might have about in-house work.
That's not what they say.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Maciej Rutecki, General Counsel at Ciech Group. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm David Malinowski. Thank you so much for watching us, and see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.